Hello, everybody. Let me get my computer turned back on. It decided to take a nap. There we go. And we'll just make sure that it gets up on the screen. Hello. I am so excited to be here. Hello, Poland. Woo! This is my third time in Poland in 3 years, but third city. And what that tells me is that there's a ton going on in tech in Poland. There's just so much that I can come to 3 different cities 3 years in a row for different events, and it's just awesome. I love it here. And I am really excited to talk with you about the future of user interaction. I know that's not the title that was on the agenda. It's the same talk. Don't worry. This communicates really what I'm trying to communicate to you all a little bit better. So, actually, really quick question. The subtitle is "Making It So Jarvis Can Do Stuff." Who here knows what I'm talking about when I say Jarvis? Okay, we'll talk a little bit about Jarvis here in a little bit. Before we get too far into things, though, some of you are already standing, which works out great. For those of you who are not standing, I'd invite you to please stand up if you're physically able to join us. Yeah, I know. Stand up, you Europeans. You're like, well, he's going to make us do stuff. All right, put your arms out in front of you like this. Squat down and come back up. Yeah, there we go. That is exercise. We're going to do 12 of these together. That was just a practice. So I want you to count out loud with me. Ready? 1, 2. No, you got to count. 3. How do you say this in Polish? 4, 5, 6. Doesn't that feel good? 7. And you can go really deep. 8. Or really like a little bit. 9, 10. I lost count. 1. No, just kidding. And 12. Okay, stretch up over your head as high as you can. And over to one side. And over to the other. All right, awesome. You can sit down. Thank you. Yes. So the computers need electrons to make things happen. We need blood. Blood needs to flow in our veins for our brains to be operate at their max efficiency. And so moving your body gets blood flowing in your veins, and hopefully that will make things better for us. So Jarvis. Some of you may not have known this, but Jarvis is actually an acronym for just a rather very intelligent system. We call that a backronym. So they're like, Jarvis sounds cool. How can we make that an acronym? But this is Tony Stark. He is the Iron Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Iron Man is a really, really smart engineer, or Tony Stark is. He's maybe not the nicest person, but yeah, really smart engineer. And he created Jarvis, an AI assistant that does a lot of things for him. So a couple of the things that Jarvis does for him, he's a personal assistant. I must have pressed the button too long. He helps with combat assistance and system control and emergency response, engineering support, research and analysis, companionship even, because they can have nice, fun conversations. So Jarvis, for Tony Stark, Jarvis is everything. He can do anything that Tony needs. Effectively, like a human assistant could. And this is really, really cool. It would be really awesome to have an assistant like that. I've actually, for a little while, I actually paid a virtual assistant to help me manage some of my things. And it's really nice to be able to just offload some of my tasks to somebody else. So what is it like for Tony Stark to use Jarvis? Well, first, it's natural language. So this isn't an app with a bunch of buttons and stuff. He's just communicating with Jarvis the way that you would communicate with a human assistant, except it's not a human, it's an AI. It's multimodal. So text and video and voice, gestures, just whatever is able to communicate most effectively is how Tony communicates with Jarvis. And what's interesting about that is that's how we communicate with people as well. We talk with our hands, we show a picture, whatever. Like, it's just feels like communicating with another human. The response is immediate, even if the actual result is not, like it's a long-running task, but Jarvis is able to respond immediately and say, hey, hold on, I'll get that to you. Jarvis is also proactive and lets Tony know when something actually is going to be going on, or when Tony needs to know what is happening kind of in the background. There's no configuration necessary. Jarvis just kind of sets things up and figures things out. And he's everywhere. In Tony's suit, maybe we don't have Iron Man suits, but Tony did. It's also in his house, in his car, on his phone, everywhere. Jarvis is all over the place. Whoops, skipping past. Here we go. So I see a paradigm shift happening for us. Jarvis would be pretty sweet. And we're actually getting to the point where we can do this sort of thing. So right now, we work in web browsers and websites. Maybe you also have mobile apps on your mobile phones. In the future, I think, and this is the very near future, we're going to be working more and more with Jarvis-like clients and MCP servers. We'll talk about MCP servers in a second. This is the reason that this paradigm shift is happening is because the user experience of a Jarvis-like experience is phenomenally better than a web browser with a bunch of links and buttons and everything. I'm not saying that UI is going away. Jarvis creates holograms and like dynamic UIs, but he's generating those for Tony that are specific to the use case. And if there's a UI that is generated that makes a ton of sense, then Jarvis can save that UI and bring it back for that particular use case. It's just that the experience of natural language is so much better than what we have today. And I think that is really exciting. So what can we not do that Jarvis does for Tony? I would say nothing, with the exception of accessing FBI and CIA data sets, and not for technical reasons. And the holographic stuff, maybe we're not quite there yet. But everything else, I think we can do that Jarvis does for Tony. So why don't we have a Jarvis already? What's the big deal? In fact, we've been trying to make a Jarvis-like experience for a long time. You have Home Assistant and Siri. Don't get me started on why. Oh man, Siri is so bad. It is so bad, and it's sad. But also Bixby and Amazon Alexa, and there are many others. People have been trying to build a Jarvis-like experience where you naturally communicate with whatever. Lots of the time it's like, hey, Home Assistant or whatever, turn off my light, and it like half the time works. And when it does, you're like, oh, that's amazing. But the reason why we don't have a Jarvis yet, I think, is because of integrations. It just is too much to set up those integrations on both sides. Say that you are Google and you're working on the Home Assistant, and your users, of course, they're going to be using Gmail and Google Docs and all these, but they're also using like infinity other services that are specific to their use case. For example, I live in Highland, Utah in the United States, and we have a website for our city that allows you to reserve a pavilion at a park so that you could like celebrate your kid's birthday or something. So I'm going to go to that website and I'm going to reserve that. If I wanted to do this with natural language, with Google Home Assistant or something, then they're going to have to build an integration that works there. And so, of course, you're not going to convince Google to make an integration with every single city's website. That's not going to work. And so what Google does instead is they say, oh, well, we'll just make this standard for connecting with your assistant, and then everybody else can build to our standard. Well, there's two problems with that. The first problem is, and that's kind of a walled garden sort of thing, like it's Google specific, but guess what? Apple also is interested in this, and Amazon and Microsoft. And so now these cities who probably have just one developer working on it have to build a bunch of integrations with a bunch of different services. So that's not awesome. And the other thing is, I, as a user, don't want to have to wire up my assistant with your specific integration for my assistant for the one time I need to schedule the pavilion. And so we just don't. It's the integrations are just killing us before we even get started. But I really just want to take every service and just have it magically communicate with my robot, with my Jarvis. That's what users want. They just want one robot that communicates with everything. They don't want you to add a chat to your application, because then they have to talk to your bot, and then they have to take stuff out of that and put it into this bot, and then they take stuff out of that and put it into this bot. They want one bot, one Jarvis that can communicate with all of your stuff, with everybody's stuff. And that is what the Model Context Protocol enables. It's the MCP. How many of you have heard of MCP? Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting because it was officially released in November. And now I feel like it's all you hear about now. Just MCP, MCP, MCP. It's huge. It's exciting. And it's enabling a Jarvis feature. That's why I'm excited about it. Okay, sometimes I click this clicker and nothing happens. So there we go. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the history of MCP, the architecture of how it works. So phase 1 of LLMs and host applications. 3 years ago, ChatGPT comes out, and it blows all of our minds. Not because now we have LLMs, because we've had LLMs for a long time, large language models. We've been able to give a computer program some text and have it generate the most sensible next token. And there were some pretty groundbreaking things that happened in that space years ago. But what made 3 years ago so impactful was the host application around LLMs, and that was ChatGPT. It basically made it so the normal, regular, non-technical people could start using a large language model and have it answer their questions. Now, maybe the answer wasn't right, but it did. It answered the question, and it's gotten so much better. And that was really mind-blowing for all of us. There's not a single person in this room who hasn't used an LLM through a host application like ChatGPT. It's amazing that it can answer our questions. The problem was, at the time, it couldn't actually do anything in the real world. So you would have like this programming problem, and you'd say, oh, okay, I'm gonna like take a bunch of context that I can, stick it into ChatGPT, and ask it a question about that code, and then I'll take the response. Maybe it updated the code to fix a bug or something, and so I'll take that code and I'll put it back in my code base, and then there's still be bugs in it. But this context, moving a context all over, not my favorite thing, but still really, really powerful. And so it's powerful enough that it was worth investing more time and energy into, figuratively and literally. So we get into phase 2. How do we make it so that we don't have to do this manual context moving? Well, what if the host application communicates with the LLM and says, hey, I've got some tools that you can use. Just let me know when those tools are appropriate, and I will call them for you. So this is, now it can actually do stuff. But it suffers from the same problem that Siri and Amazon, Alexa, and all of these have suffered for a long time. That's the integrations. It just can't do enough. There's too many things that it could integrate with. And all for the same reasons as well. You're not going to get OpenAI to agree to integrate with my city's website or anything. And so what they did actually was they said, okay, well, let's have the custom GPT thing that like now your city's developer can create a custom GPT. Okay, that works reasonably well. But then I have to go in and install that for the one time I need to reserve a pavilion or something. And there are actually a whole bunch of problems in that space, aside from the fact that it's a walled garden thing again. So this isn't where we stop. We move on to phase 3 with MCP. Now, MCP solves the problems that we had before, where we still have the host application, we still have the LLM, but now we have a standard protocol to communicate with these tools. And what that means is that whether you're Anthropic or Google or OpenAI or any of these others, you have a standard interface to communicate with any tools all over. That's basically, host application is now the browser, and these tools come from a server. We've just replaced the browser and websites with Jarvis-like clients and MCP servers, or mechanisms for exposing services, which is what a website is. And what makes this really cool is now we can do anything. We don't have to, right now, well, yeah. Clients aren't quite ready right now, but they're going to be. And when clients get a lot better than they are today, then you won't have to configure any number of services. It'll just discover it, just like a human assistant would. You say, hey, human assistant, I need you to accomplish this task for me. And that human assistant is going to go over to Google, or they were before ChatGPT was a thing, and they're going to find out what are the necessary tools, and they're going to go use those tools. Our AI assistants will be able to do this as well. Just find the most appropriate tool to accomplish the task. You want to send money to a friend? Great, I'll use PayPal. And you say, actually, I wanted you to use Cash App. Okay, great, next time I'll use Cash App. And it just learns about you as a human assistant would. This is really cool. So let's expand on this architecture a little bit. You've got the host application, it's wrapping an LLM, and there's a non-standard protocol communicating between the host application and the LLM. Everybody does it differently, but there's a mechanism for the host application telling the LLM, I've got this list of tools, these different things, just let me know if you need to call any of these things or get additional context or whatever. And then the host application sets up an MCP client that's a one-to-one to the server, and the server manages all of the tools. And the way that this, what makes this so great is that the service provider is in charge of the MCP server. So they can update it, they can make changes to it, they are in charge, just like they're in charge of the website or the app or whatever. And that's what enables this Jarvis-like future, is now all of your services that you've worked really hard on over the last decade or more can communicate with Jarvis. Can provide additional context to Jarvis. It can actually perform mutations or make changes for whoever is, whatever user Jarvis is representing. This is pretty exciting. So let me show you a quick demo. I'm actually going to end kind of early here, but we're going to talk through what's going on here. I actually recorded this morning as an updated version of this. How many people recognize the application that we're looking at here? Okay, so this is Claude Desktop. It's like ChatGPT, it's from Anthropic. And Claude supports MCP, and I've pre-configured it with a couple MCP servers because, like I said, clients aren't quite ready yet. I had to configure it ahead of time, but eventually the MCP steering committee is working on a registry so that these things can be discovered dynamically. But here I say, write a journal entry in EpicMe. That's an MCP server or a service that I created for journaling. For me at KenzieDodds.com about my trip with my son. Get my location and weather conditions and make up a creative story with relevant tags. Thanks. You always want to say thanks and burn up a couple $1 million of these companies' money. Okay, so the first thing that it does says, sweet, I can help you create that journal entry. Let me start by authenticating your EpicMe account. And so here it's going to authenticate with the EpicMe server. So yeah, authentication is actually a thing already in as a part of the MCP spec. For if you're curious in the technical details, it's OAuth 2.1. So like very standard, all of the problems that OAuth 2.1 has, this also has. but it's actually pretty normal flow for people to go through. So I say, okay, and actually what we're looking at here too is what we call the human in the loop. So this is an agentic experience, like a ChatGPT or Claude. All this chat experience is agentic in that it's just a loop. It just keeps on doing things. You provide it more context, and it goes through again. And so here, occasionally, the LLM decides it needs to do something in the outer world. And right now, like if you go back to Tony Stark and Jarvis, Tony is not approving a lot of things that Jarvis is doing. Maybe if Jarvis is going to fire some missiles or something, then Tony's like, I approve. But in general, Tony trusts Jarvis enough to just do things kind of on demand. We do not trust our LLMs that well right now. It makes mistakes a lot. And so we're going to have this experience until we do. But the idea here is that the human gets to approve the different things that the LLM is going to do. So here I'm going to allow the authentication, and here the MCP server replied to the LLM and said, hey, yeah, the user's been sent an email. And so right here, the LLM says, hey, you should have received an email with the validation token. So go ahead and grab that from your email. And then I can go and get additional context for the rest of your query. So I check my email, and there it is. I actually think like there's already an MCP server for Gmail, so I probably should have just installed that, and it could have grabbed the token for me, which all kind of happens behind the scenes, which I think would be pretty cool. But yeah, I just grabbed the token from my email, and I paste that in, and now it's going to validate my session. So now it knows, okay, so you clearly own me at kentcdodds.com, so I can associate all of your user data with that email. Now it needs to get my location, so it's going to use a server that I have installed. That's a local server called Locationator. It's a local server because I can't use a remote server to know where my laptop is. So it takes my laptop's information. It gets the latitude and longitude of my position, and here is the latitude and longitude of where my computer was at the time I made this demo this morning. And it uses that to get the current weather for where my device is, using another server for the current weather. This is very similar to what a user or a regular human would do, right? If I had a human assistant and I said, "Hey, I'm a heartless father. I don't want to take time writing this journal entry. So you write it for me. And I want you to figure out where I was and what the weather was like when I did that." Okay, so the assistant's going to find out, okay, where were you? Now I'm going to go look up what the weather was. And like using that information, feeding into the next thing, and then into the next, into the next. That is what makes this really cool, because so far we've used 3 different servers. One for Epic Me, the journaling app, one for the weather, and one for location. These 3 services didn't need to communicate with each other at all, but guess what? They are integrated. And that, I think, is pretty cool. Like, goodbye glue code. We don't need to build these special integrations for each thing. The LLM can just handle that for us. And so now it's grabbing the list of tags that I have in the database, so it knows, okay, what tags already exist. And actually here, as long as we're talking about the human in the loop, here I actually say, hey, let's allow this always. They're going to create a tag for me. I don't need to approve. Like, go ahead and create whatever tags you want, LLM. And so now it'll just create all the tags that it decides it needs to accomplish the task that I gave it. And once it's created all those tags, then it can go ahead and create the entry. And just for the fun of it, let's read the entry, because LLMs are hilarious and come up with the funniest things. So what started as a simple father-son outing turned into an epic adventure. Epic is my word, so that I think it knows that. Through the cobblestone streets of, actually, Krakow? Is that how you say this, the name of this city? Is that right? Krakow? But I've heard a lot of people, even Polish people, say Krakow. And so I'm confused. Is it Krakow? Krakow? Okay. Krakow. Okay, I'll say it the right way. Or I'll try to anyway. The streets of Krakow. And is this Stare Miasto? Something like that? All right, you know what it says. My son appointed himself as chief navigator, despite having zero knowledge of Polish geography, armed with nothing but enthusiasm and an uncanny ability to spot the most interesting side streets. Man, I love LLMs. They're hilarious. We wandered through the medieval squares, him pointing excitedly at the Gothic spires, while I tried to explain the history, though, honestly, his theory that dragons once lived in the castle towers was way more entertaining than my Wikipedia-level facts. That actually is like a legend, right? That there was a dragon. Yeah, we're going to go see that later. That's going to be fun. Yeah, 64 degrees Fahrenheit, apparently. That's the weather it was when I created the demo. It's now much hotter than that. Made it perfect for our impromptu photo shoot, where something I missed that. The highlight was definitely when he discovered a street musician, I love this, playing violin, and decided to provide backup vocals, aka enthusiastic humming. The musician was a good sport and even taught him a few bars. Nothing quite like bonding over terrible musical collaboration in foreign country. Yeah, there's nothing quite like bonding over a fake journal entry either. By the time we found our way back, he was already planning our next adventure. That sounds a lot like my son. Sometimes about finding these dragons, or something about finding these dragons he's convinced are still hiding somewhere in the old city walls. Who am I to argue with that logic? Mood is happy, weather is sunny, location is this place I can't say very well. And here are the tags based on the ones it just created. And whether or not it's a favorite. Of course it's a favorite. And so we allow this journal entry to be created. And great. It created the journal entry. Awesome. Now, normally I'm going to write my own journal entries, but the experience will be effectively the same. It can still grab necessary context, and I can ask it to fill in some of those pieces for me automatically. And now I'm asking it to show me the entry it just made. And you'll notice it's going to do this get entry call. And the response is a big JSON object. But is it going to show me a JSON object? No. That's one of the cool things about tools with LLMs is that the tool can give it in whatever format is good for the LLM. And it's arguable that JSON is a good format for the LLM. It might not be. But the fact is that once it gets that stuff, it's just context for the LLM. So maybe I was asking it to summarize the journal entry, or maybe I was asking it to like point out interesting aspects of the journal entry. It can do whatever it wants to with that context that it makes the most sense for me. It could even generate a UI and like show some pictures and whatever else. That is currently a possible thing today. And it's not showing me that JSON is saying, here's the title, here's the content. It could have put that in H1 or something too, made it look like a blog post. Pretty cool. And then I just say, hey, go ahead and delete that and log me out. And it does. So it's a pretty cool future, a pretty cool present that we have that for me, I'm really excited about for end users, for regular non-technical people to be able to integrate with all the services that we've been busy building for all these years. And I think that it's exciting. Like most people who are using MCP are using the developer aspects of MCP. Like Playwright has a really good MCP server. Anybody use the Playwright MCP server? Yeah, that thing rocks. You can control your browser with and even write automated tests with the Playwright MCP server. There's MCP servers for different databases like Prisma and Neon and all of these different services that are really developer focused. And that, like, when it comes to these really technical things, that kind of makes sense that we would develop stuff to solve our own problems. But people are starting to develop stuff to solve like normal, non-technical user problems. And so today we have a bunch of clients. How many of you are using Cursor? Cursor? That fork of VS Code? Oh, wow. I'm actually surprised how few hands are up. VS Code. VS Code? Okay, sweet. Anybody using Windsurf? Okay, handful of you. Awesome. So these are obviously developer tools. I think anybody here using like JetBrains stuff too? Yeah, okay, there we go. That makes sense. And they have MCP support as well. So my apologies if you work at JetBrains that I didn't put your logo up here, but I do recognize you. I was a big WebStorm user for a while. But then there are like the more normal, I say normal, like the regular people tools like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude Desktop and Claude AI. There's also Goose, codename Goose, which is pretty cool. And I failed to mention Zed. Anybody here use Zed? Zed editor? Sweet. It's written in Rust, which makes it cooler than everything else. On the server side, we've got a bunch of service providers that you are familiar with already, and that this is growing all the time. We're in the very early stages of this. Honestly, this feels a little bit like the beginning of the web, where just so many things need to be created, and it's a really exciting time because you can make a really big impact on this brand new ecosystem of tools and services. And these are services that you're already familiar with. But I think that there will be entire businesses that are only accessible through MCP. In fact, the journaling app that I demonstrated is only accessible through MCP, including user registration. Everything is built only through MCP. And of course, that email, that I suppose that also counts. That's like one interface there too. But I think that is pretty cool and pretty exciting. Lots of really cool things going on. So I'm going to wrap up. Like I said, I'm going to be a little bit early. The mono-context protocol specification, that I actually failed to mention this. This is Anthropic, made this in November. And so it's actually pretty new. But it is led by people from a lot of different companies that you're familiar with. Microsoft has actually put a ton of effort into it. And if if we're talking about clients aren't ready yet, the client that is the most ready is VS Code with Copilot. They are just always on top of the latest in what's going on in MCP, which is really, really cool. They're very, very involved in the specification. But yeah, you can read the spec. It's, as far as specs go, it's actually a pretty good read. And then I have been dedicating all of my time and attention on AI stuff, and specifically MCP right now on epicai.pro. The .dev was taken, so those jerks. But yeah, I created epic react.dev, epic web.dev, and now we're going pro with Epic AI Pro. But you can take a look at a whole bunch of posts that I've put up on there about MCP. Yep, there we go. There we go. Yeah, so take a look at those. I also have workshops on MCP, so nobody can actually tell the future of what the world is going to be like, but this is my prediction for the future. And anybody who tells you that this is the way the future is going to be without acknowledging that nobody can actually tell the future, is probably selling you something. I am selling you something, but I'm still going to acknowledge that maybe things could turn out differently than I expect. But I feel really strongly about this, and it always comes, for me, it comes back down to the user experience. What's the best user experience? And then, of course, there's like a lot of other aspects to what the future shakes out to be. A lot of that has to do with money. But I think that things are aligning in such a way that MCP is going to have a huge part in that future. So with that, I just want to wrap up and say you all are great. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time.